Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Environment and Natural Resources Policy and Finance Committee to order. Today's date is Thursday, April 19th. We have the minutes before us. Representative Newberger, would you move the minutes for April 18th, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After careful and deep scrutiny, I do move the minutes.
Thank you. All those in favor of the minutes as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the minutes are approved. Members, we're going to continue where we left off yesterday. We have testimony on House File 3502, and I think Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy is here to testify. I got Kevin Ruther on my list. If you could,
Mr. Chairman, members.
if you could limit your comments, we'd appreciate it. We'd like to get done by 10 o'clock. Thank you. Proceed.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, obviously I'm not Kevin Ruther. My name is Ann Cohn. I'm a staff attorney at the Minnesota Center, and I'm here to testify on behalf of the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy. We'll confine our comments today to Section 54, which is a section that is intended to eliminate NPDES permits for transferring waters. It's attempting to actually incorporate an exemption which was put into federal law into our state law. And what I don't believe the committee has heard is that in 2008, Minnesota actually filed a lawsuit in opposition to this new federal exemption. And the reason Minnesota was concerned about the federal exemption is because it would allow things, for example, like North Dakota draining Devil's Lake, which is a briny lake, which may have invasive species, into the Cheyenne River, and which flows into the Red River of the North without a permit. So Minnesota, recognizing that the unpermitted transfer of these waters could in fact jeopardize our economy, our fish, our boating, our outdoors and way of life, Minnesota filed a lawsuit opposing this federal exception to NPDES permitting. So this language, which now tries to import this same problem into our state law, is actually broader than the federal law and possibly even in conflict with it, because it would in fact allow polluted groundwater to be discharged into our surface waters without a permit. So Minnesota needs to maintain some means to control the water transfers. I mean, waters of the state have differing water qualities. Some of them are very polluted, and we don't want willy-nilly to have no mechanism to prevent these waters from being transferred into cleaner waters. Your constituents don't want that, who have clean lakes that they enjoy. They don't want to have briny water or otherwise polluted water transferred without some mechanism for ensuring that the quality of the receiving water is not diminished. So we're here to say do not kill a fly with a hammer. Obviously, there was a reason for this bill to appear. There was a Court of Appeals decision which unfortunately tried to impose pollution law on a situation where there were two waters that were always connected. And that, of course, didn't make sense. But here today, let us not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Section 54, as it stands, is not supported. And it is opposed by, it should be opposed by anybody who cares about clean water here in the state of Minnesota.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
I get to ask that question. Representative Hornstein? No.
No, I just thought that was fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you. Okay. Next, then, we will move right along. And Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question on a couple sections before we go to amendments, just quickly.
Okay. I think what I will do is, I'm actually going to move. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is on page 35, section 30, the Red River Basin Commission. And then I think there's some components in the subsequent sections from the Drainage Work Group. And I know you mentioned that some of this had been heard in the Ag Committee, but the jurisdiction for the Board of Water and Soil Resources is in this committee. And I don't think these were heard here. And I know yesterday I thought I saw Mr. Harnack here, like ready to testify on that Red River Basin Commission one. I don't know if he's here today, but maybe there's somebody who could just explain that section 30. If there's anybody from the, maybe there is, maybe Ms. Taylor or.
Yep. Who wants to volunteer?
We have a Bowser.
Or, oh,
Okay,
Mr. Harnack is here.
thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Angie Becker-Kudelka with the Board of Water and Soil Resources. Mr. Chair and members, subdivision 10, section 30, subdivision 10, I believe is the, it's taking a recognition of the Red River Basin Commission into statute. Manitoba and North Dakota and Minnesota are all working together on issues in the Red River Basin, and this is one way to, as they look for joint funding, this is one way to put that the commission has existed for a long time, but it's one way to put it into law that this commission exists. And I believe, if Mr. Harnack was here, I believe that the idea or the point behind it was this opens up more joint relationships and looking for joint projects together.
And I would point out too that on the first line, 35.3, it is permissive language. The board may. Mr. Harnack, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. Ron Harnack with the Red River Basin Commission.
Can you speak up, please?
And Representative Hansen, yes, the Red River Basin Commission is a 105c3 nonprofit organization that represents Manitoba, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota. It is organized in all three of those entities for the purpose of coordinating efforts in the Red River so that we can create a common vision for flood damage reduction, a common vision for water quality, water supply, recreation, and so forth in the Red River Basin. As most of you know, we don't have a magic wall that goes down the middle of the river that says this is your water, this is my water. So it's important to have an organization like this that can deal with providing the citizen input, the public input, to provide some common goals and objectives for managing the Red River waters.
Thank you. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, my concern is I hope this doesn't require this sends the bill to government operations. Are we creating
We've checked on that
something new, or I know it has existed, but I know you're under time concerns and.
Yep, we've already checked with GovOps, so, okay? Amanda does a very thorough job of looking out for things that fall into the purview of GovOps. Representative Clark Johnson.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm trying to
Chair.
keep the Johnsons, the Karens, and the Clarks straight today.
Yeah,
so.
okay, that's okay. We don't mind a little confusion. My question is, I just want a clarification on section 112 on page 83. This is related to agriculture and water quality. There's been a lot of discussion on the nitrogen rule and on the, I assume this would not have any impact on the nitrogen rule moving forward, but I'd like that affirmed.
Not to the best of my knowledge, no, it does not. Okay? Representative Wagenius.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have a follow-up to Representative Hansen's, but I was also on the list when Ms. Gauthier was up, and I would like to finish my question to her.
Okay.
Okay, but for the Red
Ms.
River
Gauthier,
Basin.
come on down, please.
For the Red River Basin, one of the things that I think makes this particularly, it's not a recognition of the importance of the Red River Commission. I think we all think it's important. But in the past, I think we as a legislature have chosen to directly appropriate to the commission. But this language allows the Bowser to appropriate to the commission. And I think that is what is particularly different here. It's the board may provide information and technical or financial support to the Red River Basin. And I question whether it would not be better just to have the legislature continue to have hearings and make those appropriations. So that's my
Thank you.
comment on that, and maybe Representative Hansen would want to talk about that. But when we left, we were talking about the wild rice and the permitting and the section here that takes away any standard in law. And in your testimony, I heard you say something about that this would make it, if you did not have a standard, then you had no way to issue new or expanded permits. Did I hear you right?
Ms. Gauthier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Greta Gauthier, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Mr. Chairman and Representative Wagenius, I don't remember exactly what I said, Representative Wagenius, but what I understand is that were this bill passed into law and on the books, it would be difficult for us to write permits for new or expanding facilities, because we would, if we wrote a permit based on the federal standard, we would be in violation. If we wrote the permit without acknowledging the 10 milligrams per liter current federally approved standard, then we would be in the area of violating federal law. But if we wrote the permit without acknowledging the new science, we would also be violating federal law. But if we wrote the permit with those things in it, then we would be violating state law, which this would be state law at that time. So it'd be difficult. Very difficult.
Representative Wagenius.
Yes, thank you for expanding on that, because one of the issues we have around here, and particularly when we move fast, is that the law of unintended consequences writes the law. And in this bill, I worry about the law of unintended consequences. But in this case in particular, the irony here in the law of unintended consequences, that the permits that this proposed legislation is intended to accelerate will have the exact opposite effect and make, for example, polymet harder to permit.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure who wants to answer this, but how many permits did PCA issue without the sulfate standard after it was adopted?
To the testifiers.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Nicholson, I don't have that information with me, but I certainly could get it for you. But there were probably many, over
Representative
the years intervening.
Can you give me a rough estimate?
To the testifiers.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, Representative Torkelson, you're asking me about the number of permits we wrote between 1973 and 2017 that did not have a sulfate limit in them.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's the question.
Ms. Gauthier.
Mr. Chairman, we have hundreds. Mr. Chair, we have about 1,000 MPDES permits out there, which are renewed every 5 years. However, that's how many MPDES permits we have today. I don't know how many we had in 1975 or 85 or 95 or 2005.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And how many times has the federal government challenged you on that issue of not having that incorporated in your permits?
Ms. Gauthier.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, excuse me for the delay.
fine.
I have my helpline here. Mr. Chairman, Representative Torkelson, the federal EPA has not challenged us.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just one final question. How many times has this occurred in other states where the federal government has challenged the lack of a sulfate standard in a permit?
Ms. Gauthier.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Torkelson, I don't have information on how many times the EPA has challenged the lack of a sulfate standard in other states, but I do know that Minnesota, Wisconsin, Wisconsin are the only states that have wild, non-cultivated wild rice growing in them. Michigan used to, Mr. Chairman, but they don't.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to get that information, please.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Ms. Gauthier.
I'm sorry, Representative Torkelson, just to clarify, you want answers to all of those questions? Or just about the EPA challenging other states?
Yes.
Over the last 4 years, okay.
Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Gauthier, I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about how many permits have been issued now that we have all this new information, all this new science, and under a standard where, I guess if you could speak to that so far, and then the standards that this language would require of you. Has anything like that ever happened in the last, I guess we're talking 40-some years?
Ms. Gauthier.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Representative Becker-Finn, thank you for the question. Just to make sure I understand. So there was a law passed in 2015 saying that we could not implement any water quality standard for sulfate until we were done with this rulemaking, or there was an end date of January 1, 2018, which last year was changed to January 1, 2019. So since 2015, we have been prohibited from doing that. We would not have issued any permits under our new science because we're not done with the rulemaking yet. You know, there's a long rulemaking process the legislature set forward in Chapter 14, and we're kind of at the getting towards the end of that, where it's not uncommon for us to go back and forth with the ALJ. So that's kind of the point that we're at now. Once we can't issue permits until that rulemaking would be completed, submitted to the EPA, and approved by the EPA.
Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, and we touched on this yesterday, but again, this is, yesterday was the first time we'd really discussed this with MPCA's input. So so 2015, we haven't done anything since 2015. And we have this new science now. Can you just speak again a little bit to what the federal requirements are as far as the science and as far as the requirements that it be, you know, a better standard, or I think you touched on that yesterday.
You know, members, I would say too that the ALJs, we've talked about new science. The ALJ rejected the new science. So, Ms. Gauthier.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Becker-Finn, I'm sorry, can you repeat? Oh, right, okay. Just 1 second. Yeah. I'm going to phone a friend, Mr.
Sure. Would you
Chairman.
identify yourself for the record?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, my name is Catherine Neuschler. I'm the manager of the Water Assessment Section at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And to Representative Becker-Finn's question, you know, when a standard is submitted to the EPA to replace an existing standard, the EPA has set forth things that their submittal has to contain, and that includes a demonstration that the new standard is sufficiently protective of the beneficial use. In this case, the beneficial use being the harvest and use of the wild rice as food. So the submission has to contain that demonstration that the science shows that it's sufficiently protective, or that it's sufficiently protective of the use. So it has to be at least as protective, or there has to be a demonstration that such protection isn't needed. And the MPCA science shows that the equation is sufficiently protected.
Representative Beckerfin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think to clarify what the ALJ said, the ALJ didn't say it was bad science. I mean, it's peer-reviewed science that's been accepted within the scientific community as good science. My understanding of the ALJ opinion was that the application that the MPCA was promoting would be extremely difficult to implement, which is different than saying that the science is not accurate. If you could comment on that.
Ms. Nuschler.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Representative Beckerfin, we would agree with that interpretation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Yep. Okay, at this time, I'm going to move to re-refer to Ways and Means, House File 3502, and then we will go to work on amendments. So that's the motion, and we'll start. Yep, and then we're going to amend the DE2 onto House File 35. So I'll move the DE2. All those in favor of the DE2 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. The amendment is adopted. Representative Beckerfin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we going to have an opportunity for public testimony since we had to kind of cut off Representative Wigenius and didn't have time yesterday?
We had the list before us yesterday, and the people who were on the list, were acknowledged and came to the table with the, and I think the one exception was MCA, and we made sure that we got them on there. So there might have been one more person. I don't remember for sure who that was. If you care to, sir, now is the time. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. My name is Robert Quade. I'm representing on Section 93, the Sand Dune State Forest concern. I'm a member, graduate of the University of Forestry, St. Paul, 34-year employee of the DNR. And we have concerns with the leading out Section 93 of this, concerning the Sand Dune State Forest. A few things I heard yesterday that I wanted to bring up that I thought were maybe not accurate. This is not a local forestry issue. I'm not adjacent to the Sand Dune State Forest. I've worked on this for hundreds of hours. We have a lot of concerns about the plan that was put in place. There was representatives at these meetings from trails and recreationists who prefer a experience that is a forestry experience. The plan was, for 70 years, the Sand Dune State Forest has been managed as a forest, planted, encouraged as a forest. Adjacent to it, the Sand Dune State Forest is 6,000 acres. Adjacent to it is a 30,000 acres National Wildlife Refuge. That's been managed as Oak Savanna. We believe the plan of the DNR isn't taking certain things into account. We feel that one of our main points as a group is that we feel this 30,000 acres adjacent to the Sand Dune State Forest is sufficient enough in Oak Savanna to meet that goal as opposed to the 6,000 acres. The plan is to move that half of that 6,000 acres of the Sand Dune State Forest into Oak Savanna habitat. The plan to do that would be through removing the trees, putting fire on the ground, putting chemicals on the ground, possibly pasturing, all which has been done in this refuge, and we think that's probably not a good plan. Some have said that they've questioned the rarity of Oak Savanna. We question that as a group. We have several things we base this plan. We question that the DNR based on this plan. They question the rarity of Oak Savanna. In their plan, they say it covers 0.02% of its original habitat. That's from a 1986 study. And then in 1990, the mid-90s, they said there's actually 7% of the habitat, which is 300 times as much as they send the plan. We believe that the DNR has made a few mistakes. We encourage the extension of that timeline that of last year's bill, and we would ask that, and we believe this also is a nonpartisan issue. It seemed like last year one of the most disappointing things is kind of evolved into a partisanship effort. We, in our committee of our group, is represented all the way from the whole political spectrum. In this way, both Jim and Andrew in the Senate have been real statesmen in taking people's points of view that they probably would agree with ideologically on other things, but on this, everybody agrees. We think that the language in the current thing calls for the forest to continue to be managed as forest with scattered opening as opposed to be managed for oak savanna with scattered forest. And if you were to ask anybody around the country, other parts of the world, that the plan is to take a vibrant forest, harvest it, burn it, put chemicals down, and graze it, we don't think there would be much ideological difference on where people would think if that's a good idea or not. Yesterday, I listened to Jim's passionate testimony. When he says, if it's not broke, don't fix it, this forest has been managed for 70 years for the forest. The recreationists, the locals have all come to realize this. This plan would push it backwards toward open landscape, 30,000 acres to the north. Our group, and I've got 12 myths and problems with that plan. I'm willing to share that with you. John has my email, or Jim has my email if you want that. So if you want more information, I'd certainly be glad to get that to whoever. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Yep. All right, we'll go to the amendments, and we'll start with the A2. Representative Heinzman to the A2. I will move the A2 amendment for Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, I'll mention there is an event up near Quade Mountain, that's Hill City, where approximately 7,000 people come to ride ATVs and participate. The issue this amendment tries to resolve is a number of folks that show up there have their machines equipped with a snorkel. And for those of you that might not know, a snorkel just allows the air box to be extended so the engine can get air above the engine frame. So the problem we're trying to fix is that at this event, they have what's called a mud run. And a lot of these machines at this private event, after they've participated, they go on to ride some trail systems in the area. Unfortunately, that's illegal in statute. So we're trying to just make a quick adjustment. DNR is okay with what we're doing here, so I'd appreciate members' support.
Discussion to the A2. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, you know, a quick adjustment for one event is permanent. So my reading of this is lifting this immediately then would allow snorkel devices on ATVs anywhere at any time. Is that correct?
Representative Heinzman.
And just a clarification, Representative Hansen, in most places they are legal, but on a state trail system, they currently are not. And one thing that should be considered here is a lot of these machines come from the factory on the showroom floor with a snorkel already in place. These things don't just pop on and off, and it's quite a hardship. And all the law that's already in place that would prohibit riders from going into prohibited areas, that's still in place. We're not changing anything except for the fact that we're allowing a machine that happens to be already equipped or be equipped with a snorkel to be able to access state trail systems. And like I said,
State trails. Representative Hansen.
And Mr. Chair, with on the state trail system, though, that could go into wetlands, lakes, those prohibitions are still there.
You'd have to go
that's
off-
illegal.
Oh, sorry, that's illegal, so.
Still have some concerns about opening this up.
Thank you. Well, this is a great bill, or amendment for the ATV advocates out there. So, to the A2 amendment. Okay, all those in favor of the A2 as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
The amendment is adopted. Representative to A3, I believe Representative Poston's got that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment allows professional guide services to guide turkey hunts. Currently, in statute, they're not allowed to do that and charge for their services. That was put into statute many, many years ago when we didn't have the population of turkeys that we have today, and we didn't have as many people enjoying the sport of turkey hunting as we have today. And I think the guides would do a really good job of teaching children and teaching people how to hunt turkeys if we allow them to do this.
Okay, discussion to the A3, Representative Hornstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
A real turkey lover.
Yes, this is of interest to me. No, I don't necessarily oppose this. I just was wondering if this had been before us. Was it ever introduced as a bill, or is this the first time?
Representative Poston.
This is the first time that it's been before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Earth-shattering stuff here.
Yeah.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question's on the repealer and the precedent we're setting there on guiding and charging. I'd like to have the DNR just testify about
Just
that.
look at that. Just happens to be near the witness table. Identify yourself for the record and proceed with your turkey testimony.
Colonel Smith, Director, Enforcement Department of Natural Resources. Mr. Chair, members, the department does have concerns about this. Our concerns center around hunter access. This conversation is pretty robust, especially down in the southeast part of the state where the prime turkey hunting is. And there are a number of turkey hunters that are concerned that if this does pass, that turkey guides will lease up large portions of private property, thus limiting access for those people that can't either afford to lease those properties or pay a guide. And so we look at it as a hunter access issue. And if you look at some of the current guiding that we have, obviously we have fishing guides, but that takes place on public waters. And we did go through a number of years ago through a process with bear hunters and bear guides, and we actually had to limit the number of bear baits that a bear guide could have due to public access concerns. And so centered around the department's concerns are the possibility of having limited access to those people that can't afford a turkey guide.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, on the repealer, on the paid guide issue, and what has been Minnesota's kind of, you mentioned bear, but how about deer or small game? You know, the commercialization of hunting, I know that is growing. I'm just looking at the department's position or practice or past practice relating to guiding.
Mr. Chair.
Proceed. Yep. Colonel.
Representative Hansen, those are concerns that you did illustrate. Obviously, we do have fishing guides who are paid, but then again, that takes place on public waters. We do have these concerns with turkeys and deer as well. And so removing the language in the repealer would then allow a turkey guide to charge compensation, thus giving them the opportunity to lease up more land. And we have those same concerns with deer hunting guides as well, if that ever comes to fruition, because we do see in other states where hunter access is extremely limited because of people, you have the haves and the have-nots then, basically.
So, members, if you take a look at the repealer, and I'm sure Ms. Taylor can confirm this for us, this repealer is specific to turkeys. It has nothing to do with deer or pheasants or any of that. Strictly turkeys. Okay? Representative Karen Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering if we could hear what the average fee is that a guide for this type of hunting would be charging. Do you know?
Mr. Chair, Representative
The author of the
Clark.
amendment?
No, I do not know, Mr. Chair.
Colonel?
Mr. Chair, Representative Clark, I have no idea either. And that could be a sliding fee based on the location, based on the prime areas for turkey hunting. So but there probably wouldn't be any set fee.
Yep. Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess my concern is because this is the first time we've seen this language. It wasn't a standalone bill. We've basically had no public testimony on this issue. And based on what the DNR is telling us right now, it sounds like there would be turkey hunters and folks from the public who really would likely have some opinions about this. And so I just have concerns about taking on this whole new issue in this way in an amendment where we're not giving the public a chance to weigh in or even know what's going on with this. Representative Poston, maybe if you can speak to why this is coming in right now and not earlier. I know obviously the turkey population has extended in recent years. I certainly know folks who are interested in this now. If you could just speak to why we're doing this in amendment and why we didn't discuss this sooner.
We didn't discuss it earlier. It came up very recently. I've had several constituents that are in the guide business that have asked to see this changed. I did reach out to the Turkey Federation. They're neutral on this. I did reach out to the DNR. This response was not given to me when I reached out to the DNR. They were somewhat neutral on it as well. In northern Minnesota, the amount of turkeys that we have today in comparison to years ago is incredible. A lot of people are learning this sport, loving this sport. I think the professional guides would help train people to turkey hunt properly, especially children. And guides are being asked to guide this type of hunt.
Yep, Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess my concern is that, kind of the average Minnesotan hasn't had a chance to weigh in on this. And we talk about the haves and have-nots, and obviously guides charge a fee. That's the whole point of why they want this.
Sure.
I'm just really concerned about doing this year this quickly without really giving the average hunter the chance to even know this is going on. Certainly the media hasn't reported on this. This is all really new, moving really fast. So I, significantly concerned about the public not having a chance to weigh in on this.
And just to be clear, the guides can already guide, okay? Guides can already guide someone to go turkey hunting. It's simply now just removing the part about the financial aspect of it. Representative Ublem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I am a turkey hunter, and it's a wonderful sport, and I think it's one of the great success stories in terms of how turkeys were first brought in and introduced in the southern Minnesota and how they have spread throughout the state. Having them up in the Brainerd area, even up in the Walker area, they're a very hardy bird. They've taken quite well to the state, and there are a lot of them out there. And also, there's many cases where in certain permit areas, they're not filled. There just aren't really enough turkey hunters for the turkeys that are out there. It's also a sport that requires a certain amount of expertise like anything else, and a guide can help you a great deal. And I think a guide could encourage younger hunters to get into the sport, encourage safety, and turkey hunting requires a good degree of safety. You're on the ground, you're in camouflage, you're making calls to turkeys. You have to be very careful. And I think another example of how some of these guided hunts affect the economy, you don't have to go any further than South Dakota and take a look at what they do with their pheasant hunts and things like that out there. So I think it'd be a good economic boon. It would be probably something that would help safety and help the sport. That's my opinion as a turkey hunter.
Representative Lewick.
Just a quick question for the Colonel. I got turkeys running all over the place where I live. Is there anything right now that would stop me from leasing my farm out to an individual that wanted to hunt exclusively on there with or without a guide?
Colonel.
Mr. Chair, Representative Luick, absolutely not. You could lease your property to an individual, and that happens quite often in this state, whether it's for turkeys, deer, or other things.
I rest my case.
Thank you.
There's nothing wrong with this.
Quickly, testifier at the table.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, I'm Lance Ness. I'm president of the Fish and Wildlife Legislative Alliance. I'm also an advanced hunter education instructor, and for the past 35 years, I've educated folks on how to hunt turkeys. It used to be required. It's not required anymore. It's a volunteer. We don't charge a fee, but it is, as some of the folks have testified here, that it's a unique sport. It does take a degree of safety because it is a very dangerous sport because you're camouflaged from head to toe in the woods making sounds of a wild animal, and sometimes that attracts a different hunter that we don't really want. But for many years, we've accessed land with a handshake, and we, as emphasized in our classes, to ask permission first. And that's been the tradition in our state. And we would hate to see a land being bought up, leased away, and locked up for private individuals. This happens out west. I also hunt in Wyoming, and the outfitters got all the best land. They're all locked up. You can only hunt deer through an outfitter, and I'm afraid that's what this may lead to. So we have concerns about the issue. That's the reason it was put in the original bill and has been that way since the early 80s. So we oppose the bill.
Thank you. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would ask for a roll call on this and would oppose the amendment, I think, for a variety of reasons. One is that we're just seeing it now, but also the commercialization of hunting and providing the ongoing separation of those who have money and those who don't, being able to access the outdoors. I think this is, and I, Representative Uglem, I've hunted was at my wild turkey banquet 2 weeks ago.
Did you win a gun?
Won a fishing pole. Well, my son won a fishing pole. So, but I think we often talk about the consequences, unintended consequences. Representative Wagenius mentioned a short amendment here may have bigger consequences than we think.
Representative Brian Johnson.
Mr. Chair, members, I'm actually think this bill would be a good idea. As you mentioned, back in the late 80s when this was put into effect, that's when around the state, members of the public started planting turkeys all across the state and getting them to grow. At a point now where we have thousands and thousands of turkeys running around. On my way in here today, I drove by some state land in my district. There was about 200 turkeys out in the field. They are everywhere. And as Representative Luick said, people can lease the land now. I've lost hunting land because people have leased the private land for deer hunting and other things. So it's stuff going on right now. We have a lot of state land that we can hunt turkeys on. I don't see a problem with this.
Former Representative Hackbarth is at the witness table.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I just sent a text to Tom Glines, who is a close personal friend of mine. He is the regional director for the National Wild Turkey Federation. And I just asked him about this, and he said that they are opposed to this legislation.
Thank you. Okay, roll call having been requested. Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to some of the folks that are, speaking to how many turkeys there are. Well, as the chair just mentioned, guides can already guide. This is about people who have money being able to access something that people without money can't access. And, if it's such a great idea, why didn't we introduce a bill so we could have an actual discussion with the public able to testify and not just folks who are connected and lobbyists and agency staff? I just really think this is a direction we don't want to go, especially when we're talking about the commercialization of hunting, which is something that should be accessible to all Minnesotans.
Representative Poston.
Yep, Mr. Chair, based on this conversation, I'll pull the amendment.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, next we have the A18, Representative Metza. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, the A18-0785.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an amendment that essentially gives more Minnesota hunters and fisher people access to voter registration. And with over 500,000 people hunting in the state, I think it's important to encourage them to get out and at least have the opportunity to register to vote and have that accessibility where they are enjoying their sports. And this would allow them to do that through the DNR in their books on their website. And there's a little bit of work left to do on the amendment in lines 1.14 through 1.16. The last sentence, in addition, the commissioner must include voter registration application in the printed and digital versions of the fishing regulations and hunting and trapping regulations. There is a fiscal note that came to my attention in working on this with Senator Kiffmeyer, but we do intend to keep working on that through Ways and Means and make sure that it doesn't impact the budget. And same on line 1, excuse me, on 1.8, the last sentence there. On the web page where an individual has the option to print a license to hunt or fish, the commissioner must include a direct link to the Secretary of State's online voter registration web page. And so between those, the impact would be around $55,000 currently, but I am committed to working with Senator Kiffmeyer and the committee here to make sure that we make the budget whole if it moves forward. Otherwise, look for alternatives to making the amendment successful to be on the bill without an impact to the budget and targets.
Thank you. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, members, for the record, Bob Meyer, Assistant Commissioner, Department of Natural Resources. And first, let me say we do support the concept within this language. It's very similar to the life source process that we talked about, whereby we create a link to another website. However, in that situation, life source actually paid for all the costs associated with that. The underlying piece that we're concerned about is actually in 97A.057 that deals with federal law compliance and restrictions on federal license revenue. Subdivision 2 talks about restriction on license revenues, and it says, money accruing to the sale from fees charged for hunting and angling licenses shall not be used for any purpose other than game and fish activities and related activities under the administration of the commissioner. So this, while it has costs to the programming and to the license books, those dollars come from the Game and Fish Fund. So we need to try to figure out how can we do this cheaply or get these costs paid for so that we aren't going to be found in a federal diversion. In addition, in the fiscal note, we talk about the card stock. This talks about in our regulations book that I handed out a couple days ago, we would have to have a card stock that would tear out, be a perforated card. And if we can't come to figure out how to do this, that change in printing will be $40,000 to $100,000 annually. As you know, we print over 1 million of these regulations books. If we can just put something in the book that says go to the Secretary of State's office, I mean, we're more than willing to work on this and try to figure it out, but we cannot support the language because of the diversion issues with the Game and Fish Fund. So.
And I think we're all committed to continuing working on this as we get to Ways and Means. So with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Anything else? All those in favor of the A18-0785 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The amendment is adopted. Next. Yep. Next, we have the A10 amendment, and this is making some changes to the salt applicator certification program that we've discussed. And what we're doing is going back to the language as it was, as it came out of civil law, okay? And we're deleting the language as it was presented in this committee. So I know, yep. So what's left, if you take a look at the back of the A10, line 2.1 through the bottom, it would be subdivision 3. It's the liability. Yep, and we are removing, so we're gonna remove section 80. Okay? So, yep, so this subdivision 1, Ms. Taylor, would you go through that for us?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I understand the intent is to not replace the entire section, just
Right.
subdivision 3. So what you would want to do with the A10 amendment would be on line 1.3 of the amendment, delete that line and insert page 67, comma, delete subdivision 3, and then just delete lines 1.4 through 1.24 of the amendment,
Yep.
and then line 2.23 and 2.24 of the amendment as well. And that would just leave the new subdivision 3 of language from the amendment.
Yep, so I'd like to move that, as stated by Ms. Taylor. Okay, so everybody clear what we're doing? What we're deleting on the first page? Okay. So all those in favor of, yes, sir.
There's a testifier.
I understand that. Mr. Carlson?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
And members. Mr. Chairman and members, Joel Carlson, I'm here on behalf of the Minnesota Association for Justice. I just want to briefly comment on the A10 amendment. I toil in the Civil Law Committee frequently, and I certainly appreciate the work that they've done. But as you just did on the last issue, and as we do frequently around here, many times you're approached after a bill leaves committee and you're asked to work something out to make it work for everyone. What you have in the bill on page 66 represents an agreement that everyone had worked out between the governor's office, the Pollution Control Agency, the authors, Clean Water Action, and specifically as it relates to the liability provision. And so when Representative Smith, who's been one of the co-sponsors of this bill, approached me to work out an agreement, I did so in good faith. And I thought that they would uphold that agreement that we made. What you have in front of you with what's left of the A10 amendment, Mr. Chair and members, is the most expansive absolute immunity for property owners that I've ever seen. And it was represented in the Civil Law Committee that the language on the liability section is just similar to what we do for the government. And Mr. Chair and members, that's simply not true. What I handed out to you is Chapter 466. And you'll see, and I've highlighted it for you, that the government's protection for snow and ice accumulation only applies unless they're negligent. And when this bill left this committee, the standard, the legal standard that this committee voted on was negligence. If you look at what is in the A10 amendment right now on the liability section, you will see that not only do they not have a negligence standard, they have to affirmatively be willful or reckless, even when they have actual knowledge of the dangerous condition. And if you further look at this amendment, all they have to do to receive this protection is to pass an exam, complete the winter maintenance assessment tool, and keep a written record. They don't even have to follow the best management practices that are going to be adopted by the PCA. And so we absolutely think that the direction of this liability protection is just in the wrong way. And if Representative Smith would have told me when he asked me to work this out that we were going to just simply undo it because we had to abide by what the Civil Law Committee did, which is his committee, he's on it, he's the one that asked me to do it, we would have said, okay, forget it, we'll deal with this in the Senate. But that's not what happened. They asked us to come to you in good faith with an agreement. We worked that out. We worked it out with all the parties. And so we oppose what's left of the A10 amendment. And that is not what we do for the government. This is more protection for private for-profit businesses than we give to anyone. And we're strongly opposed to it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to me.
You're welcome. Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And It looks to me like this also strips out the agency's enforcement authority on this, as well as changing the liability. I asked for a roll call on the A10 amendment.
Okay, roll call being requested. The chair votes aye.
Heinzman.
Oops,
Hanson.
just a second. Yep. 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 Okay, so we got to go back, members, to the amendment as it's being changed, as Ms. Taylor briefed us on, deleting basically the first page, again, 1.4 through 1.24. Okay, so all those in favor of that signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. The changes made to the amendment are adopted. So, roll call being requested of what's left of the A10 amendment, which is, the chair votes aye.
Heinzman. Aye. Hanson.
No.
Thacker.
Aye.
Becker Finn.
No.
Bliss.
Aye.
Clark.
No.
Eklund.
No.
Fisher.
No.
Green. Aye. Hoppy.
Aye.
Hornstein.
No.
Johnson Bryan. Johnson Clark.
No.
Lehman. Aye. Lewick.
Aye.
Metza.
No.
Newberger.
Aye.
Poston.
Yes.
Sundin.
No.
Swedzinski.
Aye.
Torkelson.
Aye.
Uglum.
Yep.
Wagenius. No.
There being 14 ayes and 10 nays, the A10 is adopted, as amended. Representative Clark Johnson, A18-0798.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the amendment. And what this amendment does is it allows Bowser to continue using some remaining funds in the account to support the Working Lands Project. I consider the Working Lands Project to be one of the better things we've been doing in the last several years in the legislature, because it brings together those who care about water quality along with those who farm to work towards more sustainable agriculture and to look at ways where we can make it profitable to use perennials, more profitable to use perennials and cover crops on the landscape, which we know through scientific evidence is really important for reducing nitrates. In essence, this is a bill the same as a bill that's authored by Representative Torkelson, and so I ask for your support of the amendment.
Discussion. Okay. All those in favor of the A18-0798 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The amendment is adopted. Next, we have the A11. Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the A11. This amendment is to clarify a couple of things that we heard in testimony when we were hearing the bill on the watershed work last week. What it does is, first, it helps clarify the performance section. I know there was a lot of confusion on that last week, and so what we're trying to do is clarify that. We've turned it into two different sections. And the way that is easy to think about it is there's the performance-based, which is basically the activities that we carry out, the projects that are out there that have got quantifiable measurements. Example, the TMDLs, making sure that we're carrying those out. Then there's the other part where there's the eligibility section, where these are more like the funding for overhead that's out there, where they're a little bit more your fixed costs that you're trying to cover. And a lot of these grants are very small, are just a couple $1,000s. People still, the organizations receiving those grants would still have to do reports on them, but what it's doing is helping draw a distinction between where we've got eligibility criteria that's been set in statute as we award the funds versus the funds that are following things that are looking for measurable, definable results as we're carrying out the actual day-to-day projects.
Thank you.
And then there's one second part, I'm sorry, is on page 42 in the water section, we're adding the definition of waters used as drinking water sources. We had missed that when we were defining all the waters before, and that was, this has all got peace in the valley.
Sure, good. And I support your amendment, Representative Fisher. Other questions to Representative Wagenius?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't going to say anything until I heard the word peace in the valley.
Well, I thought it was drinking water. I apologize.
I support the amendment. It does not solve all the problems in the bill where we are eliminating outcomes and going just for process. So I just want to comment on that.
Thank you. Anything, Representative Fisher?
And
I'm surprised you're not solving all the problems, Representative Fisher.
We're working, and there's still a lot that is going for the outcomes. Is in the performance-based area, there's still outcomes that they still have to achieve in here, and that is referenced throughout. It just looks a little differently because of having to unplug from the federal government guidelines so that we can incorporate all waters, not just be limited to the surface waters that are already impaired.
Thank you. Anything else, members? All those in favor of the Fisher A11 amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The A11 was adopted. Next, Representative Hansen, the A8. And what we're doing, okay? Yep. Would you explain your amendment, please, the A8?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is on page 21. The ATVs on Hayes Lake.
In, not on.
Yeah, not on, in the park, not on the lake, right? Well, we just did that snorkel thing now, right? Mr. Chair, when we talked about this in committee, I had some contact from folks concerned about opening up the precedent here on operations within state parks. And usually the camel's nose under the tent gets applied to things that we want to do. I'm concerned about the precedent opening up this issue, and so I'd ask for a roll call on removing that section.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, obviously I oppose the Hansen amendment. So roll call having been requested on the A8, the chair votes nay.
Heinzman? Hanson?
Yes.
Backer?
No.
Becker Finn?
Yes.
Bliss?
No.
Clark? Eklund?
No.
Fisher?
Yes.
Green?
No.
Hoppy?
No.
Hornstein?
Yes.
Johnson Bryan?
No.
Johnson Clark?
Yes.
Lehman?
No.
Lewick?
No.
No.
Metza? Newberger?
No.
Poston?
No.
Sundin?
Yes.
Swedzinski?
No.
Torkelson?
No.
Uglum?
No.
Wagenius?
There being 16 nays and 8 ayes, the amendment is not adopted. Next, Representative Hansen, the A9.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, this is a little more comprehensive amendment that eliminates some sections that were not heard in the committee. And it goes to that Red River Basin Commission. I think we have some concerns about the precedent there of allowing the agency to distribute dollars versus the legislature making that appropriation. So I would move the A9 amendment and ask for a roll call.
Sure. Any discussion? Seeing none, and a roll call having been requested, the chair votes nay.
Heinzman. Hanson.
Yes.
Thacker. Becker Finn.
Yes.
Bliss.
No.
Clark.
Yes.
Eklund.
No.
Fisher.
Yes.
Green. Hoppy.
No.
Hornstein.
Yes.
Johnson Bryan.
No.
Johnson Clark.
Yes.
Lehman.
No.
Lewick.
No.
Metza.
No.
Newberger.
No.
Poston.
No.
Sundin.
Yes.
Swedzinski.
No.
Torkelson.
No.
Uglum.
No.
Wagenius. Wagenius?
Yes.
That's an aye?
Yes.
Thank you. There being 15 nays and 8 ayes, the amendment is not adopted. Okay, the A15, Representative Hanson to the A15. I'll move the A15 for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The A15 is the de-icer one, and Mr. Chair, I'm not quite sure after the amendment that passed how this would even be incorporated, but I would like to talk about it, and
maybe Ms. Taylor can help. Okay.
Mr. Chair, members, since the A10 was changed so that we were only changing subdivision 3, your amendment should still function as it was originally drafted.
thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd move the A15 amendment. Mr. Chair, this is a little different issue than the liability. The SALT application, we've had the testimony, and I think during that I mentioned I wanted to continue working on this. I did meet with Representative Anselmo, and I think he wants to continue working on this. What is the purpose of the SALT program? Is it liability protection, or is it reduce the use of salt to protect water quality? This amendment makes it clear that the purpose of the program is to have the training on best management practices to reduce the use of salt to protect water quality. I also include responsibilities with the commissioner on approving the training or the testing and work on the best management practices to consult with the University of Minnesota so that the science that the university would have would be included in the training program. Also, a common issue that we see when we start new programs often is to have an implementation time to develop this, to make sure that we get the best possible program, and to have a sunset date so that when it comes back to us for review, so that we don't start a program that goes into perpetual, never-ending process, that it would come back to the legislature to see if it should continue. I know the other side of the aisle likes sunset provisions, so I thought maybe that would be an incentive. So I move adoption of A15.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Were these provisions heard in committee?
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Torkelson, in committee, we heard the bill. I raised these issues, and I'm putting them into black and white here in the amendment. So this, yes, they were heard in committee.
Thank you.
I raised concern about the training.
Okay. Yep. So we have the A15 has been moved. All those in favor of the A15 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. No. The amendment is not adopted. Representative Hansen, the A16. This is to the swine, feral pigs, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is to, we had quite a discussion about the feral pigs. Some members may remember a few years ago when we had a pseudo-rabies outbreak, and I think there was actually a time when they could not have the swine exhibit at the state fair because of pseudo-rabies. And if we have feral pigs running around, they could be a vector for carrying that disease, which would decimate the agricultural, the hog industry. So I think if you're going to approve the taking of feral swine and the keeping of the carcass, it should only be after that feral hog has been tested for pseudo-rabies and found clean.
Representative Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd have to speak against the amendment. It's just not necessary. It's adding more language into the bill. It's not needed. I just spoke with the Board of Animal Health this morning, and this is something that is it's tested for regardless, along with many other diseases. Now, if we want to go down this road of labeling every single thing that we want the DNR to do, I might go there. You know, I mean, but we're going to have a whole lot of laws on the books if we do. It's not necessary. It's already common practice.
Representative Green, is there anything in your bill that prevents the DNR from testing for pseudo-rabies?
No, in fact, the whole idea behind the bill, when it was finally done, was that there would be testing done, and that's why we want these hogs reported. That was one of the reasons we brought the bill forward.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd ask for a roll call.
Sure. Anything else? To the A16, roll call having been requested, the chair votes nay.
Heinzman.
Nay.
Hanson.
Yes.
Backer.
Nay.
Becker Finn.
Yes.
Bliss.
No.
Clark. Eklund.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Green.
No.
Hoppy.
No.
Hornstein.
Yes.
Johnson Bryant.
No.
Johnson Clark.
Yes.
Lehman.
No.
Lewick.
No.
Metza.
Yes.
Newberger.
No.
Poston.
No.
Sundin.
Yes.
Swedzinski.
No.
Torkelson.
No.
Uglum.
No.
Wagenius.
Yes.
To the A14, there being 14 nays, excuse me, the A16.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. To the A16, there being 14 nays and 10 ayes, the amendment is not adopted. Oops. Yep. Okay, next we have the A14, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, this is relating to the chronic wasting disease appropriation that allows the DNR to conduct some of the activities relating to inspection. I move the A14 amendment and ask for a roll call. This does, it also brings in the ability for the DNR to enforce provisions of the Farm Survey. So if there is an inspection, they have the enforcement ability to act on that rather than just doing the inspection.
Well, members, as I understand, they already have that ability to act on it, and this also then covers Board of Animal Health and the Ag Committee. With that, I would encourage a no vote on the A14. Discussions to the A14. Okay, so with that, with the A14 roll call having been requested, the chair votes nay.
Heinzman. Hanson.
Yes.
Backer.
Nay.
Becker Finn.
Yes.
Bliss.
No.
Clark.
Yes.
Eklund.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Green. Hoppy.
Aye.
Hornstein.
Yes.
Johnson Bryan.
No.
Johnson Clark.
Yes.
Lehman.
No.
Lewick.
No.
Metza.
Yes.
Newberger.
No.
Houston.
No.
Sundin. Swedzinski.
Nope.
Torkelson.
No.
Uglum.
No.
Wagenius.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Representative Sundin?
Sundin votes, I don't know. Yes. No.
I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Maybe. Okay, so to the A14, there being 13 nays and 11 ayes, the amendment is not adopted. Representative Becker Finn, A13.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move the A13 amendment. I do request a roll call. A13 would remove the provision related to the DNR Fisheries Technical Committee. And we did have a robust discussion on this issue in committee. I just think it's important that we not put into law something that would potentially be telling the DNR to violate treaty agreements and sovereign agreements with our Native communities. It would encourage a yes vote.
Thank you, and I remind members that this is permissive language. It doesn't require anything. Okay, so it encourages conversations to create more openness and transparency with some of the things going on at Mille Lacs. Representative Clark Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't often comment on this subject because I kind of recognize the tension in it, but I want to speak in support of this. I worked a long time with the tribes in North Dakota when I worked for a former senator from North Dakota. And the concept of tribal sovereignty is really important. And Representative Becker Finn frequently speaks to the importance of the treaties and just how valuable those are and how very real they are. And it may be permissive language, but this amendment is needed to demonstrate that the state of Minnesota really does honor those treaties and respects the tribes. I think a yes vote is really important on this bill.
Thank you. Any other discussion to the A13? Representative, hey, there's a discussion to the A13. Commissioner Meyer.
Mr. Chairman, members, Bob Meyer, Assistant Commissioner, Department of Natural Resources. I raised our concerns about this section briefly yesterday. What we have in place right now is an agreement that allows the chairs of the Environment, Natural Resources, Finance, and Policy Committees or their alternates to attend the meetings. That has been working fairly well. There's been a lot of attendance there, so we are concerned about what this would do to the current process that we have and think the system in place is working.
Thank you. Anything else, members? Representative Beckerfield, I do believe you requested a roll call, correct? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. So roll call having been requested on the E13, the chair votes nay.
Heinzman.
Nay.
Hanson.
Yes.
Backer.
Nay.
Becker Finn.
Yes.
Bliss.
No.
Clark.
Yes.
Eklund.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Green. Hoppy.
No.
Hornstein.
Yes.
Johnson Bryan. Johnson Clark.
Yes.
Lehman.
No.
Lewick.
No.
Metza.
Yes.
Newberger.
No.
Poston.
No.
Sundin.
Sundin votes yes.
My apologies, Representative Sundin. Swedzinski.
No.
Torkelson.
No.
Uglum.
No.
Wagenius.
On the 813, there being 14 nays and 10 ayes, the amendment is not adopted. Representative Becker-Finn, the A5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move the A5 amendment. The A5 would remove all the provisions related to the House File 3280, the wild rice sulfate standard bill. I would also request a roll call vote. We have discussed this issue, but I just think it's important that folks have an opportunity to let our tribal communities and environmental interests know where we are on this provision. The bill is moving separately as well. I don't see any reason to include it in the omnibus bill and further complicate things on this issue. Would encourage a yes vote.
Thank you. Discussion. Okay, then to the A5 amendment. Roll call having been requested, the chair votes nay.
Heinzman.
Nay.
Hanson.
Yes.
Thacker.
Nay.
Becker-Finn.
Yes.
Bliss.
No.
Clark.
Yes.
Eklund.
No.
Fisher.
Yes.
Green. Hoppy.
No.
Hornstein.
Yes.
Johnson Bryan.
No.
Johnson Clark.
Yes.
Lehman.
No.
Lewick.
No.
Metza.
No.
Newberger.
No.
Poston.
No.
Sundin.
Yes.
Swedzinski.
No.
Torkelson.
No.
Uglum.
No.
Wagenius.
Yes.
So to the A5, there being 16 nays and 8 ayes, the amendment is not adopted. Okay, we have before us House File 3502 as amended. Yep. My motion here now. Okay, oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Yep. Ms. Taylor.
Mr. Chair, members, there's a small technical amendment that we would recommend if someone wanted to move it. It would be on page 3, line 30, delete first and insert second. This will let it match up with the spreadsheet.
I would move that oral amendment to make that change on line 3.30, changing first, deleting first and inserting second. Amazing how smart some people are and thorough. Questions on the oral amendment, technical amendment? Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the oral amendment is adopted. Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I have a question on procedure first. I think many of us have heard that we may have a giant omnibus bill on the floor rather than having individual committee bills as we move towards this. I'm asking if your intent is to keep the Environment and Natural Resources as a standalone bill moving through, or is there a decision that this gets folded in with healthcare and corrections and public safety and all that?
Representative Hansen, I haven't had any discussions with leadership on what the plan would be. And, I'm comfortable doing any number of different things. And we'll move the bill out of our committee. It'll go to Ways and Means, and then things will happen there.
And Mr. Chair, follow up?
Sure.
So any idea on timeline for that?
Representative Hansen, no, I've not been briefed on any timelines. So, but my hope is obviously we can get things moving.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members. We're actually done a little bit ahead of time today, it looks like. But the bill in front of us, the 84-plus pages of appropriations and policy, is similar to the bills that we've had over the last few years under Republican control. It has a variety of policy provisions in it, actually more policy than appropriations. And yes, that's been done when Democrats have been in control, but it seems to be a greater pattern in the last 4 years. And the experience of having, I look around the room here, and most of the folks that are here are paid to be here either by interests or by their agencies. And the opportunity for the people of Minnesota to engage becomes less and less. I'm concerned, Mr. Chair, that if we get into a giant omnibus bill, we go into the dark of night and have even less opportunity for Minnesotans to see what happens or how the laws that affect them can be affected. We tried to make the bill a little better, and some of those provisions were taken today. Most were not. But in general, it's hard to make this better. What happens, we have big issues in front of us related to the environment. We have climate change, we have water challenges, we have pollinator challenges, we have air quality issues. We have a wide range of issues that face Minnesotans, wherever they live. But many of the bills that are here, I would refer to as almost I know a guy bill. I know a guy who's got a problem. I know somebody who has an idea. And we all have constituents. But the bill is full of that I know a guy stuff. I know somebody who has a concern or who has had a problem or who has a disagreement with an agency. And then we have the larger issues relating to wild rice and mining, which are perennial issues here. So I think we're actually avoiding some of the large questions. Last year was the budget year. There was an opportunity, and that opportunity was missed to actually engage on those conversations with the Minnesotans. And I think we, on this side of the aisle, offer a better alternative to take these topics to the public and to engage them more, to make sure we have a better Minnesota relating to wherever you live, that you have clean drinking water, clean air, clean soils, and a cleaner opportunity to make a bright future for our state. This bill fails in that, and I'm going to vote no.
Other discussion to the bill? Well, I know, I appreciate your comments. I think this is a good bill. I know a guy named Representative Peter Fisher who's got provisions in this bill that are very important to him. I know a guy named Clark Johnson who's got provision in this bill that's important to him. I know a guy named Rob Eklund who has provisions in this bill that are important to him. I know a representative named Jason Metza who has provisions in this bill that are important to him. And there's a whole host of people on the other side of the aisle who have provisions in here that are important to them. And we represent the people of Minnesota as well. And I think we're doing a very good job of representing the people of Minnesota. As the Sand Dune State Forest people will tell you, I can honestly say that in this bill, there's a lot of things in this bill that are looking out for some little people who want a voice. And they turn to their legislator and they ask them to solve a problem. And we're trying to address concerns of Minnesotans from the Iowa border to Canada. And with that, members, roll call having been requested. Oops, I'm sorry, I got to do my motion. Okay, thank you. It's good that we have smart people on either side of me. So my final motion is, I move to re-refer House File 3502 as amended to the Ways and Means Committee with authorization to the reviser and nonpartisan House research on fiscals to make any technical corrections that are necessary to the bill before it's engrossed for Ways and Means. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
The bill is adopted as amended.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Are we going to have any other meetings, do you think, or?
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Okay.
Okay? Thank you, all members. Appreciate your help. Have a great weekend. Thank you. We're adjourned.